Hi, everyone. Thank you again for joining us. My name is Denise Olson. I'm the Director of Marketing in the Education Department at GBH, formerly WGBH. This webinar is sponsored by GBH Education, which is a division of GBH that produces pre-K through 12 learning resources and in-school and out-of-school outreach programs. Next slide, please. So for those of you new to GBH, we are Boston's public media station. We've been a public media leader for 70 years. We produce many of your favorite shows on PBS. You can see some of those brands here. And we're one of the largest content contributors to PBS and to PBS Learning Media. Next slide, please. So PBS Learning Media is a partnership between PBS and GBH. It is a digital learning platform with resources for pre-K through grade 12 across the disciplines. Material that is contributed by public media stations and our partners from across the country. And I'll be talking a little bit more about PBS Learning Media at the end of our program, but just wanted to show the landing page very briefly. Next slide, please. So that is the PBS Learning Media landing page. I hope many of you recognize it. And as I said, I'll be talking some more about that later on. Next slide, please. This webinar is part of the programming for Civic Learning Week, which is an annual campaign to elevate civic education in the U.S. Civic Learning Week was launched by Civics Now and iCivics, and we're excited to partner with this initiative this year. I'd encourage you all to visit the website to learn more about it and to see some of the other programming and activities that they have. You only have one more day, but it's really rich with information. This gives me an opportunity to just remind people or to let you know that tomorrow, about 24 hours after this webinar, you'll receive a follow-up email with this link, with many other links and resources and links to the webinar recording. We're going to be using the chat for questions. So please put your questions in the chat. Many of you asked some very good questions when you registered, and our presenters are going to be addressing many of those themes in tonight's program. It is also the first webinar in a series of civics webinars that we're doing this year. And at the end, we will share a link with you where you can go take a survey, tell us how we did, but we're also asking for your ideas for other civics webinars later. All right. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce tonight's presenters. Lindsey Galvao is currently the Social Studies Curriculum Specialist for GBH Education. She's an experienced social studies teacher and has a bachelor's in history from Northwestern and her master's in history from Brown. She has also worked as a legislative aide for the 5th Middlesex District in the Mass State Legislature, and she served as the research director for the House Committee on Post-Audit and Oversight. Our special guest tonight is Ben Klutsey, who currently leads the program on pluralism and civil exchange, a Mercatus Center initiative at George Mason University dedicated to fostering a deeper understanding and appreciation for pluralism. Ben runs the Pluralist Lab, a series of structured sessions that bring students from different backgrounds and perspectives together to practice conversation across those differences. Ben holds a master's in international commerce and policy from George Mason and a bachelor's in government and philosophy from Lawrence University. I'd like to thank them both very much. And now Lindsey will walk us through tonight's agenda.
Thank you so much, Denise. So tonight, Ben and I are going to share a little bit about our backgrounds and why we've come to this work on civil discourse. I think it's really important to kind of center our understandings, and I hope that you can model these conversations as well, both with your colleagues and even along your students. And then I want to have Ben talk to us a little bit more about the nature of polarization. You've already seen a little example of that at the beginning with the opening activity with that 1804 political campaign ad. But we're going to talk a little bit more and dive into what polarization means today. And then we're going to do some modeling of some civil discourse. And then I always think it's really important that you leave tonight with some ready-made strategies to bring in your own classroom. So we're going to present just that. So Ben, you have a really fascinating background. What brought you to get involved in the work of civil discourse and civil conversations?
Well, thank you very much, Lindsey, and thanks, Denise, for that wonderful introduction. It's wonderful to be here. I love working with educators because I wouldn't be where I am today without educators and all the hard work that the folks who taught me early on put into sort of forming me and building me up. So I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. I grew up in Ghana, West Africa. And when I was growing up, we were under military rule. The country had gone through a Marxist revolution. And during that time, it was really difficult to say anything. You couldn't challenge the government. You couldn't push back. And one of my most memorable experiences was when my father sat me down at the kitchen table and said, Ben, when you walk outside of these four walls, you cannot challenge the authorities. You can't talk about politics. You can't push back. Don't contest ideas. Just be quiet. And that was a terrifying, statement for me as a kid. I was very shy and reserved and quiet, and it made me more so as a result. And my father said, otherwise, we'll just go back, where things were. And he was talking about, um, you know, how he had built a business. My father grew up poor. He was the first of six brothers. They, had a really, really difficult time until my father, discovered entrepreneurship, and he sold everything from newspapers to fish and all of that. And he eventually built a business, employed hundreds of people, and things were going, fairly well for him until we had the Marxist Revolution, and he was nearly thrown in jail because he pushed back on a lot of the things that they were saying. And so he was really worried for us, myself and three of my siblings. And so he would repeatedly say those words to us until I came to the United States when I took my first philosophy course, and a professor, John Dreyer, who just was an amazing man, said to me, I pick up my first paper, philosophy paper, I got an A, I'm excited. And he says at the bottom of it, you have a lot of good things to say them in class. And no one had ever said that to me before. It was really surprising to me. And I was more curious as a result. And so I started taking a lot of courses with John Dreyer. And every single day, every time in class, John Dreyer will call on me to say something. And John really developed me. And I say that John, transformed me from a quiet and timid and reserved kid to a confident young man. And when I go to campuses and I talk to students about the values, the principles that are enshrined in the American system and the Bill of Rights, I say to them that you have to work really hard to sustain these values and these principles, because liberalism or liberal democracy is the kind of thing that you take for granted until it's gone. So what led me to really focus on this issue on pluralism and civil exchange is the idea that we are a society with so many differences, but we have to learn to coexist peacefully in this sort of pluralistic society, because it's our differences that make us special, and we have to recognize that and see that as a value, as something that's important and beneficial to us, rather than seeing that as something that is negative and something to push back on.
Thank you, Ben. I feel like, first of all, what a testament to educators and for a teacher letting you or giving you or telling you you have value in your voice. And so I think it's an important reminder to everyone in the Zoom room of the power you have shaping your students as they go forth into the world. And I really shouldn't have followed you in telling, what brings me to this work, because I
Let's
feel
hear
like,
it. It's an amazing story. Let's hear it.
well, it is, but it's different. And I think growing up, my father was born in Hungary while the Soviet Union wasn't closing in on the Nazis, and was basically born in the basement of a building as it was being bombed. So it's a very kind of powerful end of World War II story. And then as a young boy growing up in Hungary, with the amount of oppression happening under the KGB at the time, wasn't really allowed to speak as well. And when the Hungarian Revolution, the failed Hungarian Revolution, had happened when he was about 10 or 11 years old, he was actually brought into questioning as a young boy by the KGB. And so I think it was a moment that my family had of saying, we're not safe here. We have to get out. And we're trying desperately to figure out how to leave the country. They left with nothing because you couldn't bring anything with you, because you couldn't go under the guise of leaving. That was going to get you stopped. But they took advantage of the chaos happening at the moment. They hired someone to escort them across the border, who took their money and fled. And they wandered across the border into Austria without any help. He spent some time in different refugee camps for a while. He was living in a school gymnasium, and they were waiting to see where they were going to go next. Was it going to be Australia or Switzerland or the United States? And it was really he ended up in the US because that's where he first got a visa. They had a really difficult journey to the US, but he landed in the Bronx, and went on to go to college, go to law school. He worked at Stanford Law for a while, was really interested in politics, and really ultimately working to make his community a better place. And I think there's a lot of that has rubbed off on me in terms of a value system, that we are a part of a community. We're all in it together. And to know that I've come from this inheritance or a legacy that was so masked um, by fear, by the inability to speak, by the inability to have a freedom of speech or choice of wondering if, someone around you is going to be killed by the government at any moment. Again, it's really, oh, really, Jane, thank you so much for sharing that. We'll have to connect later. Yes, there's a lot to be said in that common experience. And he just always talks about how being in the US is the greatest gift. And I think in times where it feels maybe we're in a little bit of chaos or discord, to remember that we have to uphold these promises of the creed as well. And so I'm glad that you brought that up. And I think we're going to have a lot to talk about tonight. But again, I think that's why I really liked going into my brief foray into state government. And you meet so many different people from so many different walks of life there, which was really an amazing privilege. But Ben, at the beginning, you saw that political ad I put up, right? Seemed kind of nasty from 1804.
Indeed.
A lot going on in the chat about how it kind of seems very similar to what's going on right now. So
That's right.
So tell me a little bit more on your thoughts of the nature of political polarization. Are we just in the same moment that we were in 1804? Is this a new moment? What's going on here? Help me out.
Well, we've had polarization, from the very beginning of the founding. Whenever you have a society where people have different backgrounds and different viewpoints, you're going to have polarization. And there are kind of different ways to think about it. When we talk about political polarization, it's sort of the ideological distance between parties. And that, we see that. We've seen that from the beginning. We see that now in Congress, especially, where there is very high degrees of polarization. In actual fact, when you look at a lot of research and surveys, it looks like Americans haven't changed too much on their sort of views on policies. If anything at all, we've actually moved a little bit closer on issues, whether it's the environment or the Second Amendment and things like that. But there's a lot of polarization, political polarization in Congress in particular, or some might say that elite institutions. the kind of polarization that I think many people experience in their daily lives is what we call affective polarization or toxic polarization. And it has to do with emotions, the way we feel about each other. Um, it's no longer that, oh, you have that view, I disagree with it, and that's it. No, you have that view. I see your views as dangerous. You are a threat to my existence. As a result, my views have to be extreme to be able to counter yours. And it has happened like this as well as a result of, what we call sorting, where we are living in spaces with people who believe the same things as we do, think the same way as we do. And, the more you spend time with people who are like-minded, the more your views become a little bit more intensified, a bit more crystallized. You begin to swap your more benign views for more extreme ones because, folks, they egg each other on. And it could be the most benign thing from the sort of the altitude of Colorado to whatever. We have the tendency to do that, especially when we're not encountering people who are very different from who we are. So I think we've moved from, political polarization, which we've always had, and it comes in waves. I think there are times when you see more polarization and times when you see less polarization. In times of war, Americans come together, rally around the flag, and, we have a common enemy. So there's a lot more unity and less polarization. And when we don't have those things, we see polarization heightened because our politics sort of become a bit more tribal. But a lot of this has to do with affective polarization or toxic polarization, and that's where we are right now. It's really challenging. A lot of surveys indicate that across Western democracies, the United States is seeing sort of the steepest decline in social trust. We're having a hard time trusting each other because we're perceiving each other's sort of political positions and ideologies as threatening to each other. And so, if you ask what you think about the other side, in terms of morality and truthfulness and all these things, it's down. We have very negative views of each other, which is unfortunate because it makes living together and solving problems together very, very difficult. And then we have sort of pernicious polarization, as Rachel Kleinfeld would say, where it has to do with the system, our primary system, and all the things that help us to make decisions across the board. We're seeing some kinds of polarization there that just make things very, very difficult. So I'll leave it here.
Well, this is really kind of helpful to center the conversation. I think we need to know what the landscape is in order to move forward. So I also want to make sure before we really dive in that we can better define what civil discourse is, because I think sometimes we define it around what it's not, or we define it as something to be polite or kind to one another. But civil discourse really isn't that simple. Can you kind of help walk me through what civil discourse actually is?
Sure. I think of civil discourse as having productive conversations with citizens who see each other as equal. We all know what it is not. It is not, fist fights. It's not, yelling at each other, screaming at each other. No, but it's having those productive conversations. And I like what John Inazu says about, having civil discourse with empathy. He says, if you can find the intersection between civic responsibility and civic grace, that point of intersection is where civil discourse takes place, right? It is when you're free to say what you want to say, and yes, you must. It's your civic responsibility to do that, but you also do that with kindness. And I think that's what we are looking for when we want to have civil discourse. In our, Pluralist Lab sessions, as we will talk about soon, there are three principles that guide our conversations that we believe are important if we want to have civil discourse. The first is respect. The idea that we have equal dignity. You have as much right to be here as I do. And because we are equal, we're free and equal citizens. You're not the boss of me, I'm not the boss of you. We have to treat each other with respect. And that's the number one thing. The number two is authenticity. The idea that we're not masking our views. We're not pretending to be anything that we're not. And we see that going on across the United States when we do surveys. We see that students are self-censoring across campuses. And what we want to say is, no, don't, right? By all means, express your viewpoints, but always with respect, which is the first principle. So respect, authenticity, and finally, curiosity. We have to explore each other's ideas in order to sort of seek to understand, where people are coming from. Then we can engage with them effectively. And especially if you're in an educational setting, you can't have a productive conversation if you don't have, a sense of curiosity, right? Learning doesn't take place if you're not curious. Sort of it's antithetical to learning. So these are the three principles. And I think if these principles are present, respect, authenticity, and curiosity, we are having civil discourse. I love the way that Monica Guzman of Braver Angels puts it. She says, I never thought of it that way. That's the title of her book. And she says, in a civil discourse, you want to get to a place in a conversation where you say, oh, I never thought of it that way. It doesn't mean you agree with them. It doesn't mean that, you're abandoning your views and embracing theirs. It just means that you now see the ways in which that they connect the dots the way they do. And that helps you to engage with them effectively. So respect, authenticity, and curiosity. And if you can find a place where civic responsibility and civic grace intersect, then you have civil discourse.
That was a really beautiful explanation, but it seems really theoretical at this point, and I feel a little nervous about trying out to authentically engage in civil discourse. So what do you think we do some practicing of civil discourse right now?
Why not? Let's go for it.
All right. And I think we'll need a few volunteers. Should we take,
Sure.
if anyone's interested in helping us practice some civil discourse, I would really appreciate it if you raise your hand. And then I'm going to just pick three people three? You want three?
Yeah,
Good number?
good.
Let's
Yeah.
pick three people to join into our conversation.
If you were in real life, I would give you these petals to represent your views, but we're going to pretend as though you have them. So we're just going to go ahead and get started. We're going to start with the most controversial history in human history. And here's the question. Which one of these has the most impact on human flourishing? Cats, dogs, or both? Neither? You're in the middle, prefer rabbits? That's fine too. So if you are a dog person, you'd say that you are on the orange side. If you are a cat person, you'd say that you are on the purple side. And if you are in between both, you are on the rose side. So think about it for 10 more seconds. Think about the reasons why you are a cat person, a dog person, or both, neither. And we're going to do a countdown. In 3, 2, 1, go. Tell me, who's a cat person? All right. Murphy.
All right.
Murphy, Lindsey, and I guess, who's a dog person?
I am.
Will?
Yeah.
Renee, you're in between both?
I'm team neither.
Team neither. That's totally fine. That's totally fine. So, Murphy, I'm gonna ask you to help us out here. Why do you think Will is a dog person?
Well, first of all, my name's John. My name is backwards on the screen. My first name's John.
I'm sorry.
Why do I think he's a dog person?
Mhm.
Because dogs have a lot of excellent qualities.
Such as?
They're usually very loyal. They seem always glad to see you, and they're a great conversation starter.
Hmm. Interesting. Um, Will, what did John get right?
I like the loyalty piece that he mentioned. I feel like I try to be as loyal as possible, and I think my dog is to me as well. So that was a good, astute observation from John. So thank you, sir.
I see. And anything
You're
else
welcome.
you'd add to that?
About what John got right about me? Or
Other reasons that he didn't mention that that you are a dog person.
I like the energy that dogs have. Sometimes just walking home and how they greet you when you enter the home. Out on walks, how excited they are to see new things. It just molds with my personality. It meshes with my personality really well. So I think that's why I'm a dog person.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you very much, Will. Now, Renee, I know you're neither, but could you offer, a couple of reasons why, John might be a cat person?
I think that John is a cat person because John really isn't into, John lives in Alaska, and John really isn't into walking the dog in the snow and following after his dog and making sure that the dog has everything it needs environmentally. He's more of a cat person because they get to live inside and don't require too much attention.
That's very thorough. John, how did Renee do?
Other than the Alaska part, she was spot on. Now, I live in Berkshire County, and usually, other than this El Nino winter, it's not ideal for dog walking. One of the reasons why we don't have a dog, we have a number of pets, is I really don't have time to walk a dog these days. But the rest of the information about cats was spot on. We have an indoor cat that doesn't even try to get out of the house. And everything that Renee said is about why I like cats is pretty accurate.
That is impressive. That's impressive, Renee. Now, since Renee, I'm going to come back to you since you're like in between both, neither. Um, is having heard sort of, Will's side and John's side, what are you thinking? What are your thoughts now about dogs and versus cats?
Me?
Yeah.
Um, it doesn't matter what Will said and it doesn't matter what John said. I'm still sticking with the fact that I don't want to be around either of the animals. For several reasons. I'm not sure if you want to hear my reasons, but I'm definitely think that all animals should be treated fairly and with respect. I just personally do not subscribe to either of those animals.
Interesting. Interesting. Now, Lindsey, we're going to bring you into the conversation. Have you heard anything that surprises you in learning about cats and dogs, or is there anything that we haven't brought up about cats and dogs that you would like to bring up?
Oh, well, there's lots of things, but as I'm a cat person, I could really see from a dog lover's perspective that having a companion who is always with you does feel really, really attractive. But I also really like the way that Renee said that she can see where both sides are coming from, and she might not subscribe to that, but she really appreciated and gave space. And I really liked how thoughtful people were in their analysis of someone else. Because when we were starting this, I really thought you were going to have us defend our position, why we're team cat or team dog. And I got a little anxious, maybe a little nervous, maybe a little sweaty. But to then start putting myself and like having to listen to why Will likes dogs, it does make me feel a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more at ease. And I like the fact that it was actually John who opened that conversation as a cat person as to why Will might like dogs. And it was really cool to see Will say, like, yeah, you're spot on. And then Renee to do the same thing, except for location. That was pretty awesome. And it really makes me think that while we might have differences, there was a lot of stuff that we could empathize with or have in common or understand about each other and the human experience. So I kind of want to dive a little bit deeper if we can.
Sure, sure. Now, it's yeah, and that's great observation. What we might ask sort of to follow up and explore more would be, so what are some of the areas where it seems like there are agreements, right? And it seems as though, companionship is something that everyone seems to care about. Is that the case? Do you see that, Will, John? Or yeah, John.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
for
that's
sure. It's,
yeah.
I'm sorry, Will, you go.
No, go ahead, John. That's all right. Oh, you muted. I think it's definitely one of the advantages of being a pet owner, that companionship. And I don't think that's unique to just having a dog. That's probably a lot of pets as well.
Mm-hmm. John?
Yeah, I think the companionship, I'll say it's not quite as constant with cats, because they sleep so much. But that the idea that you have someone that, you know, is on your side, I guess whether they choose to be or not. It's nice to have someone that you come home to that's,
Mm-hmm.
going to be there and going to be, seemingly happy to see you always, and uh, just a source of comfort.
Yeah, yeah. But then it's also possible that there, are people who the idea of, pet ownership does not quite resonate with them. So would you offer, maybe a couple of reasons why someone may not want to be a pet owner like Renee? Um, Will, would you want to give that a try?
Sure. I think I mean, one of the reasons why someone like Renee maybe wouldn't be keen on having pets and pet ownership would be our house. We'd have to constantly clean it. The rugs smell all the time because the dog's, rolling around, and that is something that we have to deal with. That a non-pet owner probably just has, a cleaner home than we do. It is a pretty solid financial commitment if you do it correctly. And I don't know about Roombas, that doesn't work for us, but yeah, the I think the financial piece, how dirty the house can get, and it is like we have two kids of our own, and we have a third kid basically with the dog. So it's a big time commitment as well as a financial commitment. So I think those could all be reasons why someone would maybe shy away from pet ownership because it takes a lot of time.
Renee, how did Will do?
He was spot on. I
Wow.
do travel quite a bit. I did see that in the chat also.
Mhm.
And I am not into the smell at all. And so that is another reason. I do have several other reasons, but Will was very understanding of my positioning.
There you go. Well, thank you. Thank you. We could keep going on and on and on just on this topic, but you can imagine us doing this on a number of things as well, like right direction of the country, wrong direction of the country, right? And we could do that with pedals, people representing their views, people taking some time to think through and write down their reasons, and just getting into the mindset of somebody else, putting yourself in another person's shoes just for a few seconds or minutes to think about why they might see the world the way that they do. Doesn't mean that you're abandoning your views. It just means that as a fellow citizen with whom you have equal dignity, you have respect for, and you treat them, with humanity. In the pluralist lab, we always use people's names, always, because using someone's name humanizes them, and that's important. So you can imagine us doing this on a number of topics, and we've done this on guns, on abortion, on on all kinds of issues. And people are always surprised that we can talk about some of the most controversial issues in the country without getting into fistfights and without feeling like it's it's impossible, because the narrative is that we're all so polarized. We cannot have these conversations. Um, and the interesting thing is that, we do it with, college freshmen. We did this actually just last week at Concordia University with college freshmen, and it was exciting. It was fun. And they were good sports. Lindsey, you want to take it back?
Yeah, so I just want to first thank Will, John and Renee, and I'm going to actually send you back to be attendees, as fun as it has been
Thank
to
you
have you
so much.
here. It feels like we're taking little baby steps here, right? Right, Ben?
Yeah.
But I just want to also iterate that incorporating civil discourse takes practice. So the way that this young, awesome kid has just conquered an amazing lift in their living room and is super excited and super proud, we need to practice the skill of discourse to improve at that skill. And then it's going to feel really awesome as we get better at it. So just like the way we might do a soccer drill or play our scales on the piano, again, students need to practice this. And this is one thing that you can do with them in the classroom. So one of the things that you could do after you have this cats and dogs or color crayons versus markers or cheeseburgers versus pizza or whatever you want to do in the classroom to set this up, have students kind of consider when you heard someone else's perspective, what resonated with you? What is something that you walked away with and you learned? Was there something that struck a chord, stood out to you, maybe made you a little upset? I'm not quite, how did it feel? Write it down. And then Ben gave me this really awesome idea that letting kids just write after this initial exercise, let students turn those thoughts into whatever, inspires their creativity or sparks their interest, whether it's a poem, a rap, a stream of consciousness, whatever they need to get it on paper, let's have them write that out. And you start sitting and playing with these ideas a little bit more.
Exactly.
So I want to just kind of also say we're in March. I think we're in the month of March, it's middle of March. I don't know where the school year is going. That every time of year is the right time of year to start practicing classroom norms and classroom strategies. So just because you didn't do something at the beginning of the year doesn't mean there's not a chance to do that as well. But I think that you want to keep having the conversation rolling in your classroom is to really start the mindset or continue the mindset of a cooperative classroom. So how do we show respect for others? How do we make sure every student feels included? How do we emphasize shared values? How do we ensure that our discussions aren't superficial? Where can we find places of connectivity or even a good laugh through our shared humanity? So I think that you can start having these conversations in your classroom with your students. It's a really good thing to maybe return to classroom norms that you've established or rewrite your classroom norms at this point of the year, or have those conversations of what do you think, to your students? How do we show respect in this classroom? How do we make sure that we emphasize what we share in our values? How do we find places where we are connected as a class? And then getting back to the values that Ben shared earlier, how do we make sure that empathy and respect are cornerstones of the classroom? And then I think it's also some time, and I'll give you all a minute to kind of think about it. How do you reflect these values in your classroom every day? And then how do you as a teacher include them as part of your pedagogy? I think, again, it's always really great to be intentional with our practices and think about that. I think the other thing too is that it's really important that you set boundaries and expectations with your class and you work together to uphold them. And I think another really great tip, if you haven't done so already, you can figure out how civil discourse ties into the mission of your school. So it's always really good to enforce what values are already there. And I know it's a time reading your questions earlier that you had submitted. I mean, it's definitely a hard time right now, I think, to be a classroom teacher, and I commend all of you. And I think where you can tie it into a shared mission as an entire school community, that's only to everyone's benefit to reinforce those values. And as you start considering what civil discourse means, I just want to iterate and reiterate that 100% agreement is not the purpose. All right. I will never get a dog. Sorry, Will, I just won't. But I love that you love your dog, right? And so we're thinking of thoughtful compromises, thinking about the greater good, thinking about our shared creedal values throughout American society. What are the promises of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution? And how can we take our inheritance in these documents and uphold them for our students and have them feel like they are a piece of this inheritance and want to continue that great work that has been going on for generations. And so again, remember, it is not about 100% agreement. We don't want that in a pluralistic society, right? Agreement doesn't help us, but thinking of what a thoughtful compromise does. So in terms of practical classroom strategies, one, I really hope that you can do some cats and dogs in your classrooms tomorrow or next week, or, again, what feels authentic to you and to your class, because again, it's a skill that you need to start honing. And as you get better at it in the classroom and as you start practicing it, then you can bring in different topics. You could bring in historical topics. You can bring in current topics. You can talk about what's going on in your school community. Maybe kids are really fired up about a dress code issue. That could be a great conversation to have. Maybe there's something else going on in your school community that could be really great, or your local community as well. So what's interesting, and Ben has, shared and modeled that they'll dive into really controversial topics, but I also understand that that might be, something that you're not ready to do in your classroom. There are so many things that you can discuss, because what we're doing is we're practicing and honing these skills. So that way, when students graduate, they're really prepared and ready to move on to whatever they end up doing after high school. So some other things that we can offer you, and we have a resource sheet that's going out to you. At GBH, we offer what are called independent student activities that are deeply embedded in civic skills. So those are ready-made activities that correspond with our media that you can print off and hand to your students, and that they can work on independently or in small groups, or even with your input. I always love to kind of make sure that they're talking and dialoguing together. I always liked being a little bit of a fly on the wall in the classroom. And I think through this, if you're reminding students, or even reminding yourself, that you're not telling them what to think, you're teaching them how to think, that's what our activities really want to offer and hone in their craft. So again, these are meant to teach students how to think. I think also coming up with stories. I think it was really important for me and Ben to share where we've come from and who we are and our backgrounds and what we bring to this work and why this work has so much meaning to us. Because I think storytelling is a way that students learn. So whether it's through our media at GBH, or your own personal stories, or other historical examples, really incorporating that rich storytelling, that multiple perspectives, I think really heightens our ability to have discourse. You could set up a mock dialogue with your students, a little bit similar to the practice that we had done right now, but again, that they could maybe delve into some other issues, taking a different role or different perspective through the creation of a dialogue together. We did the work of perspective taking earlier with our cats and dogs example, and we're not quite ready for the next slide, but when we get to the next slide, I'll share with you some sentence starters that you can also work to implement in your classroom. That will also have students saying, I never thought of it that way. But again, doing that perspective taking is so really important, and will allow you. I love that Keith just said, I want to talk about the TikTok ban. What a great way to get students engaged and thinking. And then again, if they're all for TikTok and you say, explain why someone would want the ban, just think if you've sparked and heightened that curiosity, that need for intellectualism. You've really broadened their perspective at that point, that even if they still want that TikTok, they again can see multiple perspectives. The other thing that I really like to do, I really like to have a multi-sensory classroom, is have students stand on a continuum all the way around your classroom. It's not going to be a binary. It's going to say, okay, if I take one hard position here, what might the middle ground look like? Just as Renee was our middle ground before, what might the other end of the spectrum look like? Now, what if I'm halfway between the middle ground and one end of the spectrum? And make students stand in different spots to take different perspectives on an issue or a topic to really get things rolling in the classroom. And I actually want to pause for a moment and have you come up with some ideas in the chat. Why don't you spend a minute reflecting? How will you use this in the classroom tomorrow or next week? So Keith's going to use this, use one of the strategies to talk about the TikTok ban. What are some ways that you can incorporate either perspective taking or having a mock dialogue, or again, working on the continuum? What topics would you want to talk about with your students? Are you going to do some cats and dogs modeling tomorrow, or are you going to do something else? I'm curious to see where some... Yeah, go ahead, Ben.
Bill says that he's going to try the, cats and dogs one in class. As they enter class, he's going to have them do it. So.
Oh, I'm so glad you caught that. I totally missed this. Okay. A great way to practice is by asking a dog cat type question every day to take attendance. I love that. Now you're modeling something every single day. And if you end up doing crayons versus markers, I want to hear how that goes. I'm very intrigued by that one. Renee, I think that's a really great point, asking students what they want to talk about. Because I think, yes, sometimes of something that I might think they might be interested in, they're not, and then they're really passionate about other issues. So looking at recess times. Oh, street smart versus book smart is another really good one. So John is going to delve into some Supreme Court cases. That's really, and Rachel looks like she's brought a lot of fascinating things. She's done cats and dogs. That's great.
Nice. Yeah.
And is looking at freedom of religion, and you're going to do gun rights and laws. I think that's really, I think, Ben, maybe you can speak to that more, but it seems like you set a really great foundation to be able to have these conversations.
Absolutely. And you always have to, check the temperature of your class and see if, there's enough trust to do this. But I think if you have a process, I think that's all that, people need. If you have a good process in place, you can have great conversations on topics that are very difficult, and you reinforce these principles over and over and over again. Respect, authenticity, curiosity, and the idea that, well, maybe it's okay if you're wrong. It's okay if you switch your view on something at some point of the conversation. That's okay too, because we're constantly learning, constantly changing our viewpoints on issues, and then that's fine too. So I love that. I love that. You are the best judge of the kinds of topics that you think that your students can handle because you know them well. You can start with easy, what kinds of pizzas people want, your anchovies pizza or pineapple pizzas, or cats and dogs, or you can get into stuff like guns too. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, Jerry, to your question, how do you handle it when your students ask you what you think? It's about them learning how to think. It's not about your opinion. That's not your job as a teacher. Your job is not to tell them again what to think. Your job is to teach them how to think. And that's what I would just keep iterating and reiterating to them. They're always going to want to know, but you have to stay, I think, for a multitude of reasons, just say, no, it's about what you think. I'm teaching you how to,
And Rachel says that they've skipped some tough subjects in the past, depending on what the students are ready for, and that's fine too. Yeah, that's totally okay.
Oh, and Bill, I like the idea of kids writing on Post-it notes and pointing viewpoints. And I think you bring up a really great moment that, I mean, Ben said it was writing that got you to be more extroverted, right? And that's what brought you out and helped you feel empowered. So
I mean, for our pluralist labs, this exercise we call the triadic elimination, we do that for 90 minutes or so, and then the rest of the time we have, the students are writing. We ask them to write one word, one phrase, as you indicated in the PowerPoint, something that confused you, something that triggered anger or joy, confusion, interest, something, and they just write, like stream of consciousness, whatever it is. Just keep writing. Take the ideas off of your mind and onto the paper, and they process and they process, and then we just talk about them. And we ask if they're comfortable reading portions of what they've written, or summarizing portions of what they've written, or whatever they want to do. If they want to just give us a little line from what they've written, that's fine too. And that becomes a good basis for conversations. When they're done, we ask them, what are the two things you've learned, and what is the one thing you do not know? You still don't know after having this conversation, because we want them to reflect on a little bit of humility, because there's always something you don't know, even after, trying to explore an idea. And so that's also another fun experience where they write two things they've learned from the conversation. And it's always something about how they never thought of something that way because someone brought a point that they hadn't considered. Always, always exciting and interesting.
I think that's great. And, Rachel, to your point that you've skipped tough subjects in the past, depending on what they're able to do. I mean, one thing that always sticks with me is I had a mentor say, we're planting shade trees that we never sit under. So you are still, even if they're not quite ready to have this conversation today, that doesn't mean that you're not preparing them to be able to have these conversations later on. So I think that sometimes we do need to remind ourselves of that as educators, that we are helping students, again, learn how to think and to go off and be creative and spark intellectual curiosity and joy within the world. And then I want to show you very quickly, and you will receive this, some sample sentence starters. And so if you're looking to get some conversation going, one thing that I really like is making sure that people take turns. If you partner, one person says what they need to say before you let the other person speak. Maybe if you're sitting in a small group, have each person go before someone can speak again to share their position. And I think also working on how you're framing the conversation. So for example, I agree with you because, and sharing that perspective, or I see where you're coming from and I do not agree. All right. And so it is validating a point while also sharing your own perspective as well. And then making sure that you're following up with students to make sure that they are not misunderstanding or taking kind of their own personal feelings and projecting it on someone else. You know, let me understand if let me see if I understand you correctly, for example. So you're saying that, have them repeat back to the other person can be another way for them to engage. And then as I love, I never thought of it that way. I think that really opens up the dialogue. Or after listening to you, so after listening to Will, I now see that dogs are excellent companions, right? That was a really cool moment for me. And again, we're not going to have complete agreement, but I think we have a little bit more understanding on our humanity right now. And I think where students can start to say, okay, we may seem at polar opposite sides on this issue, but as we've discussed it, we actually share a lot of similar perspectives underneath the surface of it. So maybe I will never get a dog, but I understand having companionship, someone who is loyal, someone who will curl up in my lap and want to be pet and loved. We share those similar perspectives, even if we came at it from a different way. And that also, disagreement is fine. Disagreement is great. We want disagreement. It has to be respectful. And then perhaps, have views changed at all? If they have, you know, to what extent? And where can we find a place of compromise? So Ben, any last tips and tricks that you want to send our educators out with? Maybe advice for a really seasoned teacher or advice for a brand new teacher to the classroom who's just starting their first year?
I mean, I think that you guys are doing this stuff already. And I think that it's really about, you know, reinforcing a lot of the things that you are already doing. We talked about you don't need to start with controversial issues. You can, you know, do very simple exercises. But I will say this, students are yearning for a lot of these conversations. They want to talk, they want to practice how to engage across divides and differences. The students that I encounter all the time, some of them come in a little bit nervous, but they're there because they want to learn how it works, how to be better at talking to people across different. So you're really giving them a gift if you can venture into this territory. I think you, by giving them this experience, you become a role model for really just good citizenship. And I think that's so significant. You're building norms and institutions for our society. I think that's amazing. And the other thing that I think a lot about is virtues. And, you know, what's happening with practicing these kinds of conversations is that they're learning, you know, humility, prudence, toleration, courage, justice. They're not learning these things in the abstract sense, but they're learning them in the practical sense. And I mentioned earlier on that we see surveys across, you know, United States college campuses that students are increasingly masking and self-censoring their views because they are afraid to express themselves. And so by helping them to do this, you're giving them a real gift. I think that letting them know that it's okay to disagree, it's okay to not, you know, have views that everyone else has. I think it's important. Pluralism, the idea that, we have to figure out how to coexist and live together amidst divides and differences, requires two important features. One is inclusion, that as a society becomes more and more morally enlightened, we begin to include more people who have, originally been excluded. And America keeps reconstructing itself and including more people as a result of this idea of inclusion. But we still have another feature called dissent. And it's okay to disagree with, current trends or ideas and concepts that are around. It's okay. Living in a pluralist society, that's what you get, and it makes us better for it. So it's just really an encouragement to you all in the work that you're doing. And I would say, keep doing what you're doing. You're already amazing. If you're an experienced teacher, please offer some mentorship to the ones who are not as experienced as you are. And that would be incredibly helpful, I'm sure. So keep doing what you're doing. You are amazing people. I have so much respect for teachers. And thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ben. It's always a pleasure. And so I'm going to invite Denise to share some final remarks.
Thank you all, and I'm going to be brief because we're up against the hour, but I just wanted to say thank you to Ben and Lindsey and our contributors for a really rich conversation. And I know we're all going to take something away from tonight, and the thing I'm taking away is something Ben said at the top about being able to have these conversations is necessary for solving problems. And I think that that was my important takeaway. Okay, so back to PBS Learning Media very briefly. I just wanted to say a couple of things. And that is remind you all that it's free. And even if you sign up for an account, it's free. And having an account allows you to do things like student rostering and connect with Google Classroom and Schoology and save things in folders. So please, if you're not familiar, go check out pbslearningmedia.org. You'll find lots of fun things there, including, next slide, please, our U.S. history collection. I wanted to highlight this. It's an award-winning collection, which is full of student-facing activities and diverse perspectives, and currently has 1 million users. Next slide, please. Some of the other collections you'll find on Learning Media are more that you recognize: American Experience and Frontline. I do want to highlight Frontline Short Docs, which is a new initiative from Frontline where they're doing 20-minute documentaries to make them more digestible for students than their usual length. Social Studies Shorts has a lot of great, quick little civics resources in it. And then Election Central, which is where we are putting a lot of information to help you teach the election in this election year. Next slide, please. Coming soon, we have a new civics collection. This will be for grades 6 through 12. It is patterned on the U.S. history collection, meaning standards alignment, support materials, balanced, and we're looking forward to sharing that with you soon. Next slide. Okay, finally, here's the magic link. This is the link to the survey that I mentioned at the top. And this helps us improve these webinars. We'd like to hear what you thought about tonight's program. And as I said, we'd like to hear your thoughts about subjects for our other civics webinars that we're going to be holding later this year. Once you complete the survey, you'll also be able to download a certificate of attendance, which you can bring to your district for credit. The survey link will be in this follow-up email that we've been talking about the whole time, which will have links to all of the things we discussed this evening, tips, and the survey closes March 28th. So we really sincerely listen to what you say, we look at your answers, and we bring that to our webinars the next time. So we're going to keep the chat open for a few more minutes here. The bit.ly is for the survey is in the chat. And up here, you'll see a bit.ly to sign up for our newsletter. That will also be in the in that resource document. So thank you all.